Kia ora everyone. In today's video I want to do a point and trace video on a map that I drew for a story that is called Lada. It was actually called Lada and Two Worlds, but now it is called Lada Between Two Worlds. And the story is about a girl who is about 9 years old, and the fox there is a little spider as well, and an owl, and all of those, they travel from one side of the planet through the portal to another, and they discover some amazing things on another side of the world. And the story is full of magic, and it is very kind as well. So if you haven't listened to the story, you can have a look on my channel, and I've already published the first chapter with me reading the story, but I will have a chapter published every week, so it may be that at the moment of posting this video you will have more than one chapter published already. And today's video is a point and trace, and you don't need to know the story at all. This is just about the map and me tracing on the map. So this is the map of the upside down world, as I call it. It's not really upside down, of course, but it's just the way New Zealand is placed on the globe. And this is the world where Lada is traveling through the portal. And I really like this brush because it has a crow on it, and actually a big part of Lada's world back home were crows. Those are the only birds that are still quite widespread in where Lada lives. And so that's why I decided to keep this brush in this video, because it kind of represents the other side. And this is the upside down world, and the crow is from another side of the story. And I will have this as a tracer to show you what is on this map. So of course you can see that there are lots of sea. So this is actually an island, or it is a peninsula, because it has a connection to mainland here, and this is a peninsula in the sea or in the ocean. And there are some rivers in the peninsula, and here as well, and some beaches, some smaller like this ones, and bigger. The interesting thing about this island is that one side of this island has beaches, so the coastal line is sandy, and the other side of the island or peninsula is actually a rocky shore. So you can see here my very clumsy representation of the rocky shore. So this side of the island is quite rough and dramatic, and this side of the island is more like a relaxing and bright. And the sea as well is quite rough on that side and a bit more calmer on the other side. I don't have any particular place in mind in New Zealand, but I would like to maybe, well, I think I would like to tell you a secret that I wanted this island to be very similar to Coromandel Island in New Zealand. It's again a peninsula, but it cannot be Coromandel because some things that are happening in the story will explain different features of the island and different wildlife that is not present on Coromandel. So this landscape is a fictional landscape. It's just a combination of different amazing things that you can find in New Zealand. So when Lada travels to the upside down world, she ends up here on this side, closer to the rocky shore, and you will see that when she finds herself here in this place, she is very lost and she doesn't understand what's happening and she doesn't know what's going on. So she tries to find a way out, and she sees a clearing in the forest somewhere, because it's quite dark in New Zealand forest. Sometimes it's very dark and you cannot see much, especially if the day is not very sunny, like the day when Lada traveled here. And so this is, if you can see those little dashed lines, they actually represents how Lada traveled to the rocky shore. And this is how she went there, how she ended up on the rocky shore, and she faced a stormy sea of this area, and she was really amazed by how powerful and how vast the ocean is. And then she is trying to find her friend the fox that traveled with her. And so she's trying to look for him, and she goes along the shore, and it is described in the story how difficult it is to walk or even run here, because those boulders, those big rocks, they're all very slippery. First of all, they're wet. Secondly, they're covered with very slippery algae. So the rocks like that, but bigger, they're usually covered with slippery algae, but also with some shells that have sharp edges, and so it's very unpleasant to walk or run on those big rocks. But Lada cannot stop because she needs to find her friend. And she encounters a fur seal, and then she finds a jetty and a dingy boat. And I'm not going to tell you the whole story because you need to listen to it. But what happens next is Lada actually travels all along here in the forest, travels here all along in the forest, and ends up at this big tree. And I didn't have any specific tree in mind. On Norseland, at the tip of the North Island, there is a forest of big, huge kauri trees, but this one is not kauri. I thought that this one may be rata, and rata is the very interesting tree because it actually grows on top of another tree, and then it puts down the roots that actually covers those roots. They cover the tree trunk, and then the tree that was underneath is actually dying, creating a space for rata tree. So this is an epiphyte. An epiphyte means that they live on other plants and benefiting from other plants. So it starts their life as a little plant on top of another tree, but then drops down the roots, down to the earth, and those roots surround the tree, and at the end the tree inside is dying, creating a hollow space. And that's why I thought that rata tree represents most likely the tree that is in the story, because there is a space inside this tree where Lada goes in. And you will find out what is waiting for her inside this tree. But then Lada is still looking for her friend, for the fox. And the story goes to the fox, and we find out that the fox is actually doing pretty well. And from the portal, the fox ends up going into another direction from Lada's direction. And the fox ends up somewhere along this log, and then jumps across the stream and finds a shelter in this rocky shore of the river and stays there. And so Lada, with the help of others, looking for this friend, and she goes in the forest admiring the interesting plants and very unusual songs of the birds, and also smells of the forest. She goes along and actually ends up somewhere in the area where her friend is, and they finally meet. But then the story goes further, and for some reason explained in the story, they actually need to travel to the beach. And this is where they see the difference between the rocky shore where Lada ended up the first time and the sandy shore of this beautiful island. So they travel along the stream and they travel to the beach. And on the beach they see beautiful pohutukawa tree. The flowers of pohutukawa trees are very beautiful. They're red and they have very small petals, and all those petals are covering the white sand, creating this pink blanket underneath, which is very beautiful. And they stay there for a while. They watch some dolphins jumping from the water, and they actually meet the sunset on the beach, and then they move along the river bank and end up again in the forest. But while they're traveling back here, they actually see something very unusual. It is already a dark time of the day when they travel back, and they see the stars in the sky, but also on the ground. And it is so beautiful that they just decide to admire those stars. And those stars are created by a very unusual animal that lives in New Zealand. They live in some other places as well. But in New Zealand, on the banks of the rivers, they make their homes. And little creatures create some traps for the insects, and they have this light to attract those insects in order to eat them. So they sit on the banks. They're very small, and they flick on those lights to attract insects in their trap. But those lights are very beautiful. Going along the river, you can see the lights in the sky at night and also in the ground on the banks, which is very beautiful and unusual. And then they end up going back to the tree. And this is the island and a brief story about the travel of those friends. I haven't talked to you about this house, but from the story you will find out what this house is. And those trees are just a representation of the forest, the dense New Zealand forest. And some trees are different from others. There are some beech trees, manuka trees, some cabbage trees, and big rata and pohutukawa trees. Everything is collected in this little island where Lada and her friends are traveling. This is our point and trace video, but if you want to hear the whole story, just follow the channel and have a look at the Lada Between Two Worlds. If you like my work, please consider making a donation to my PayPal account. The detailed information you can find in the description of this channel. Thank you.